Welcome to day 4 of our daily Bible devotions. We're continuing our series of discussions on the topic of origin with Professor John Lennox. Today, Professor John Lennox will talk about the roots of science in monotheism and the logical fallacy brought forward by some renowned scientists about God and science, particularly the logical fallacy of false dilemma or false alternative. In his book, the physicist Stephen Hawking even said that philosophy is dead. No wonder, because in his arguments, philosophy really died. So let's listen to Professor John Lennox.
Now comes the question, must we choose between science and God? The conviction that the universe is orderly is germinal to science. Melvin Calvin, who won the Nobel Prize for biochemistry, has no doubt about the source. He says, as I try to discern the origin of that conviction, that is, that the universe is orderly, I seem to find it in a basic notion discovered 2,000 to 3,000 years ago and enunciated first in the Western world by the ancient Hebrews. Namely, that the universe is governed by a single God and is not the product of the whims of many gods, each governing his own province according to his own laws.
The biochemist Melvin Calvin mentioned the word monotheism. Monotheism is belief in one God, that's why monotheism, belief in one God. And then he also contrasted it with polytheism, the belief in many gods. Poly means many, theism means belief in God. According to Melvin Calvin, at least, the biochemist, he saw that the universe is orderly. And for him, it makes more sense that the universe is created by one single God that makes everything orderly, in contrast to the belief that there are actually many gods governing the universe and they run the universe according to their whim. You can't expect order from that. Now, what this tells us is that not all theisms are equal. Now, let's go larger than that. Not all religions are equal. Now, you see, when scientists, when atheists, when they fight theists, when they fight people who believe in God, they think all religions are equal. They think all theisms are equal. They think all religion, they're just fundamentally the same. No, actually, that's not true. They're superficially similar, but fundamentally, at the core of them, they're very much different. You understand, of course, the difference between mono, one God, and poly, many gods. Now, others may think it's still belief in God, but there's a big difference between the two. Monotheism and polytheism, this one, according to the scientist Melvin Calvin, this makes more sense over this. Now, inside monotheism, there are different kinds of monotheism as well. Not all religions, not all theisms are nonsense, so to speak. Okay, I believe there are some beliefs in God, some theisms that just doesn't make sense. But Christianity, in particular, is a kind of theism, a monotheism that clearly makes sense and is based on facts. Now, let's continue with what Melvin Calvin is pointing out.
This monotheistic view, says Calvin, seems to be the historical foundation for modern science. Most of the great scientific pioneers were believers in God and creation. Galileo, Kepler, and Newton, to name just three. And C.S. Lewis sums it up this way. He writes, men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. That is, far from belief in God, the Creator, hindering science, it was the very motor that drove science. So science has a very deep debt to Christianity, which conflicts clearly with the idea that science and Christianity have nothing to do with each other. And still today, you will find there are many fine scientists who believe in God, like William Phillips, physics Nobel Prize winner. Why then is it the case that some leading scientists like Stephen Hawking say that we must choose between science and God?
Stephen Hawking and other scientists insisting that we must choose between science and God, that is a kind of false dilemma, false alternative. That's a logical fallacy. It's like Why do I have to choose between A and B if there's C, D, E, and F? Why take away the other choices? And why think that they're not compatible with one another? Hear me out. The people who think that science and faith or God, science and God, they're not compatible with one another, those are the people who think that on the side of science, it's just all facts. There's no belief, there's no theory, everything is just facts. And that's just false. Okay, we've seen that, we've proven that not everything in science is facts. And not all belief in God is just faith without facts. Because there are faith with facts. For example, in Christianity, Jesus Christ was crucified. That's a historical fact. Now ask even atheist historians, they affirm that. Who can nullify that? Now that's a fact that is held on by a faith. Not because it's faith, there's no facts. And not because it's science, there's all facts and no faith. That's why people think they're not compatible with one another, because they have those misconceptions. Once you truly understand, you would see why it's a logical fallacy to make a dilemma between just choosing science and just choosing God, and that you can't bring them together, when in fact you can, as proven by so many scientists.
Why then is it the case that some leading scientists like Stephen Hawking say that we must choose between science and God? One reason I'd like to suggest is this, that they are confused, seriously confused about the nature of God, for they think that theists in general and Christians in particular believe in the so-called God of the gaps. That is, I don't understand it, therefore God did it. If there's no scientific explanation, we simply say that God did it and we cover over a gap. Just like the ancients, who thought that thunder was a god roaring his displeasure. Science got rid of that god by doing a bit of atmospheric physics. Now, of course, if you think of God as a God of the gaps, then clearly the more science, the less God by definition. But the God of the Bible is not a God of the gaps. He is the Transcendent Creator, the God of the whole show. Without God, there'd be nothing there for physicists like Stephen Hawking to study. So in particular, it follows that God is the creator both of the bits of the universe we don't understand and the bits we do. And of course, it's the bits we do understand that give the most evidence of God's existence and activity. Just as I can admire the genius behind a work of engineering or art, the more I understand it, so my worship of the Creator increases the more I understand what He has done.